Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. This is Education USA Virtual. My name is Oksana, and I'm glad to introduce you our new monthly webinar. Just to remind you that our advising services are fully virtual now, and we provide individual and group advising sessions, undergraduate, graduate application guidance, essay review support, virtual workshops, webinars, and competitive student programs. If you are interested in any of these options, please scan QR code on the screen, register for our events, and we'll be glad to help you in your process. Today, I'm glad to introduce a wonderful speaker, and we'll talk about master's, PhD, or professional degree, which graduate path is right for you. Choosing between a master's, PhD, and a professional degree is one of the biggest decisions in your academic career, and of course, each path leads to very different outcomes. So today, Gabriel Luis from Vanderbilt University will break down how these programs differ in structure, length, funding models, and of course, career opportunities. Also, you will learn what admissions committees expect at each level and how to figure out which opportunity truly matches your goals. Thank you, Luis, for joining us today, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Oksana, and I really appreciate the invitation to come and talk with everybody today. I've had such great experiences, working in the past with, Education USA offices from all around the world, and I know, that you have great quality work, and it's great to be able to join this conversation today. So, a little bit about myself. So, my name is Gabriel Luis. So, I'm the Assistant Dean for Graduate Recruiting and Global Engagement for the School of Engineering at Vanderbilt University in the United States. So I oversee anything that has to do with recruiting for our master's programs, PhD programs, also undergraduate summer research opportunities, and then anything that's involving international relations. So just a little bit about my own personal background, just as a fun fact. So I was born and raised in the US, but I'm Chinese Cuban on my dad's side, and mostly Eastern Western European on my mother's side. So I do speak Mandarin Chinese. I also speak Spanish, speak English. I've lived, across, several different countries around the world. And so I know we have students joining us from many different areas, different countries today. So it's always great to connect with the global community. So yeah, today, as Oksana was mentioning, so I'm going to focus really our conversation on, many of you were probably thinking about, going to graduate school and which is the best path for you. Do you do a professional master's degree? Do you do a research master's? Do you do a PhD? What's the, kind of what are the outcomes that we can expect on the job market? How can you prepare yourself for that? The value proposition of going to graduate school. So these are all very important questions that we're going to talk about today. Before I do that, I just want to introduce a little bit about our school so you have a better idea of, who we are, where we are, and then we'll get involved in today's conversation. So here, let me see, I'll go to next slide. So just a little bit about our university. So Vanderbilt, we're located in Nashville, Tennessee. So we're in the southeastern part of the United States. So, Vanderbilt, you can see by the photos, beautiful campus. We have over 100 species of trees at the university. We're in an arboretum. So a really nice natural setting with great weather. But yet, as you can see here, we're also in a city. So Nashville, which is the city we're located in, is the capital of the state of Tennessee. The weather's wonderful. It's usually, we get 4 seasons. It doesn't get very cold in the winter, but it is hot and humid in the summer. So it's great for a place for outdoor activities. The hometown of country music. We have a huge music scene here. And we're also among the fastest growing economies right now in the United States. So, we have big name companies like Oracle just announced their headquarters are moving to Nashville. Nissan, the Japanese automaker, their North America headquarters are here. Amazon has a big center here as well. And then it was just announced recently that Starbucks, one of their headquarters, will be moving to our city as well. So it's just really booming economy, great quality of life, pretty affordable in terms of cost of living compared to a lot of other big cities. And then also we have so if we look at like the sectors that Nashville is really honing into right now, we have big healthcare industry. So Healthcare Corporation of America, the Vanderbilt Medical Center, big IT. So right now Nashville is projected within the next 5 years to have the fastest IT market right now in the US. So that's also another big area of growth. And then also having great quality of life. So really having, the really nice balance between a city and the outdoors with a lot of green space as well. Okay. little bit about our university. So Vanderbilt was established in 1873. We are a top-ranked university in the United States. For some reason, some of the numbers got a little distorted on the slide. I'm not sure why, but okay, I'll walk you through this anyways. So Vanderbilt, according to U.S. News and World Report, so we're nationally ranked number 17 in the United States. So we're top 20 U.S. university. So great academics, wonderful state-of-the-art research facilities. Being able to work with faculty that are among the best in the world at what they do in terms of research, but then also having like this really small, tight-knit community. Most of our class sizes in the graduate engineering program are around 6 to 10 students. So really being able to develop these really close-knit relationships with faculty, with other students, being able to work interdisciplinary is something that's important because everything, our research institutes, our different centers, schools are very close to each other, usually within like a 5 to 10 minute walk for most cases. So having a lot of this cross-disciplinary collaboration is something very important. And then Vanderbilt is one of the only universities in the US that has this really great School of Engineering that's also right next to a world-renowned medical center. So the Vanderbilt Medical Center is right across the street, and there's also a lot of opportunities to work with clinicians on state-of-the-art research that's coming out in medicine and engineering, among others. So total student body, 13,710 at the university. Within Vanderbilt School of Engineering, we have a little less than 2,000 students, so about 830 graduate students. The research expenditures in engineering this past year for Vanderbilt was over $1 billion US. And then the total endowment of our university is over $10 billion US, making us one of the wealthiest universities in the US. And we're also a private university. Okay. Yeah. And so this is just to give you an idea of the different programs we offer in engineering at Vanderbilt. So anything from biomedical engineering to chemical, civil, electrical and computer engineering, interdisciplinary material science, mechanical engineering, et cetera. You can see the list right here. So let's talk about the different degree tracks, right? So this presentation is really about learning about, what are the different options, what's the right fit for what you're looking for professionally, and, what are the timelines to graduation? So how do we complete these programs in a way that can also get us into, the job market is with the skills that we need as soon as possible. So let's just talk a little bit about the differences in these different tracks. And I'm going to use, also Vanderbilt School of Engineering in terms of like kind of a backdrop, just because I'm, that's the model that I'm, that we work with a lot in terms of familiarity. But a lot of these concepts that I'm going to talk about today are also applicable to other universities, in the US. So within the context of engineering, so that's the school I represent. So, we have a Masters of Engineering track, there's the Masters of Science track, and then there's the PhD track. So the Masters of Engineering is a professional degree program. So think like MBA for engineers. So somebody that wants to have, wants to go into industry, is looking for leadership skills, looking for managerial skills, but yet, is somebody with a technical engineering background. So they have the technical expertise, but now they want to get versed in what does this look like in terms of, being able to actually apply those skills into a business setting and being able to lead, departments, lead offices, lead companies, and having the skills necessary to really be able to fuse business and engineering. Now, if we look at, for example, like an MBA, so an MBA, similar in many ways in terms of like, but I would say what the difference between an MBA and a Master's of Engineering is going to be the MBA is a lot more general in terms of the types of people that will enroll in the program. People from many different industries, many different types of backgrounds are able to come in, be part of, the cohort, because you're learning about, obviously the different operations of what a company is, finance, marketing, entrepreneurial track, other sectors as well. Whereas the Masters of Engineering is really tailored specifically to engineers that want to go into business. And so the MEng program generally can be finished within 1 year. And it's usually a track where, students are taking courses, they're doing a lot of group work. So there's a lot of hands-on experience. It's not very research intensive. It's more practical knowledge, more, what you would find in the field. So there's case studies. There's going to be, for example, usually most programs will have a capstone project where you're working, with a company, doing an internship working on an active research project within that company. So there's different setups. And then some of these, programs will also include internship opportunities. So it really just depends. But generally, an MEng is designed for working professionals. So some programs, I can just say Vanderbilt, like we don't necessarily require that the student applying to the program is in industry already. They may be right out of undergraduate. If they've showed that they have a very strong academic profile, we'll accept students right out of undergrad. But generally speaking, most students coming in have probably about a 2 to 3 years of work experience. But at the same time, it depends, right? Every school is going to be a little bit different. So these tracks are, again, generally speaking, flexible in the sense that they're accommodating to working professionals. So somebody who's working full-time usually takes classes on the weekend or maybe in the evening. Some programs are lockstep in the sense that, they offer only classes Monday to Friday. So there's different flexibilities. There's some of these are going to be hybrid, online. The ones at Vanderbilt, there's several different options, mostly in person, but we do have some online programs as well, like our engineering management MEng program, or for example, there's an MS in computer science that's online as well. And then there's other types of tracks as well, right? So this would be, for students that are non-engineers. So you have, like, of course, we just talked a little bit about the MBA program. That's generally going to be a 3-year program, really giving somebody a very kind of well-rounded approach to anything business, specifically, just in terms of management skills. And then you have like people that may be going into education, higher ed management. So, these are usually going to be called like EDD programs, like doctors of education, which are fusing, business skills. So some things components you may find in an MBA program, but then also fusing it specifically with the higher education sector and how business works within higher ed. And then, of course, you have other professional degree programs that are, come from professional schools. So, for example, if you want to be a medical doctor, right, an MD, you have to go to medical school. A lawyer, this would be, the JD program. So there's different tracks of programs that are really designed to prepare you for very specific profession. And these are what we would call the professional tracks. Now, if we shift to the left side here, we have the research track programs, right? So these are going to be like your Masters of Science programs, your PhD programs. Now, keep in mind that some programs, and I can just say Vanderbilt specifically in our School of Engineering, we do not require a student to have a master's degree if they want to apply to the PhD program. So, for example, and I'm just specifically talking about Vanderbilt Engineering, I know there's other schools in the US that are doing this as well, but it's to say if there's no requirement for that, you can technically apply for a PhD without the master's degree first. In fact, many PhD programs, depending on how many credits you take, will automatically qualify you or give you a master's in passing as part of the PhD program. So the MS program is really designed for, or MS or MA, depending on if you're in humanities, is really designed for 2 different types of people, right? One type is going to be a person who says, well, I like research. I don't know if I want to do it as a career, but, let me try it out and see how it goes. So it's kind of like a stepping stone to the PhD program. So if they try out the program, they like it, they find an advisor that they enjoy doing research with, then in some, in those cases, they may wind up applying and transferring into the PhD program. Now, there's another set of students that will say, I like research. I don't want to do it as a career. I want to go into industry, but I want to have a well-rounded background that I can show on my resume that, I have this type of experience. I have this skill set that maybe other people in industry don't have, right? So, a lot of people in industry that have, the professional knowledge, they have, they know how to, be practitioners. They have the leadership skills. They're working in these positions, but not everybody has done research, right? So they're able to say, okay, well, I've done research. I have this, unique skill set that I'm bringing to the table that may make them, usually will make them stand out in an interview or job, candidacy. And so it's really a way to diversify their portfolio, diversify, their professional skills, and to give them some experience of what it is like to do research. So usually the MS program, you're going to have students who are taking classes. Many times they'll be core classes. Sometimes they'll have the chance to do like elective classes in other areas outside of their major. And then, there's a certain amount of credit hours that they have to do, in a lab, in a research lab, if they're doing a thesis. And generally these programs can be finished within 1 to 2 years. some Masters of Science programs don't require a thesis. So in this situation, students would, they'd be in class essentially, taking courses, but most students that have the opportunity to do research would probably opt to do that in the MS program. Now, the PhD program is going to be different altogether. So it is research intensive, really designed for somebody that wants to have a career in research. They want to dedicate their life to research, essentially to discovering new knowledge within a very, very, very specific field of research. And, generally, going in, mastering the field and contributing new knowledge in this area. So the PhD generally can be finished around 5 years. It's important to note that, in the first year, every program is designed a little bit differently, but again, I'll just use our program as an example. So, PhD programs, generally in the first year, students are taking classes. So usually, there's a certain requirements in terms of how many courses you have to take. But then you're also within that first year, many students are teaching assistants, so working at, teaching undergraduate students as part of the program, but then also starting to meet with prospective, potential research advisors with whom you'd want to, do your dissertation, do your research project in. And so really being able to, visit different labs, visit with different advisors, talk with them, thinking about, what would be a great research track in terms of your dissertation project. And then generally, so at the end of your first year, there's an exam that you take, which is a qualifying exam, which essentially, shows that you've mastered the coursework that you're working on. Once you get into the second year, that's when you will have another exam, a preliminary exam, which is essentially you go up in front of a PhD committee of faculty. You've already identified, a research advisor, a research topic, and then if it's approved by the committee, then you can officially begin doing research as part of your research, your dissertation. And so essentially you become a research assistant in this faculty member's lab. So you're working with them pretty much on a full-time basis at that point. At that point when you've already finished your courses, the other types of requirements that you have for the program. And now it's really time just to focus on the research, finish up the dissertation, defend it, and then graduate. And so we'll get into a little bit more details, in the next several slides, but I just want to give you just a really brief overview of, what does this look like, the timeline. And now let's talk about, the different types of, first of all, what is graduate school? What, the other benefits to going to graduate school. So essentially, just starting at, back to basics, right? It's further study beyond the bachelor's degree, usually focusing on a very specific area. So it's really specializing in a very specific area, preparing you to do research or preparing you for industry, right? We talked about professional schools. So really there to help prepare you for a very specific profession, especially if you're doing a professional degree program like a Master's of Engineering, an MBA, a JD, a MD program, et cetera. So these are really designed to prepare you to do a very specific job profession. And then we have to think about what are the career goals to going to graduate school? How is it going to benefit you professionally, right? What we can say is, you can ask yourself, does the job that I want require that I have an advanced degree? And at the end of the day, when we look at the job market, it doesn't matter which country you're in. There's so many more people now graduating with a bachelor's degree, with university degree. So all of a sudden, a job that you would have only needed a high school degree for now requires you to have a bachelor's degree. And now that we have so many people with bachelor's degrees, if you want to be competitive for that same job, now you need to have some type of graduate degree, right? So it's kind of like the game, we're upping the game every time just because of, we have a lot more people now that are getting an education, that have these qualifications. And so really the job field is becoming a lot more crowded, right? There's a lot more competitive. So anything you can do in the job market to stand out, whether it be you have great professional skills, you have a lot of, industry knowledge, whether it be maybe you went, you have an advanced degree, you went to graduate school. So anything you can do to separate and stand out is going to help. And of course, graduate school is great because you're not only acquiring new knowledge, right? We go to graduate school because we want, the knowledge that we're looking for, but at the same time, you're getting those qualifications that you can add to your resume to really showcase on the, what you can provide on the job market, right? And so these are all things that are important. It's also a good way to improve and update your skills and your marketability. So, maybe somebody who says, change, if they want to change careers, they want mobility, going back to school, kind of getting a whole new skill set, that also will help in terms of a transition to a new type of job. Higher salary, greater potential for career advancement. So that's something we see a lot in terms of the data. So somebody with a graduate degree usually winds up making more money than someone that doesn't. Now, there's also a whole set of people that go to graduate school because they're just personal interest. Maybe they're extremely passionate about a very specific area of research, and they have a lot of interest and love in the field, and they want to take a deep dive. They want to immerse themselves. They want to master the field. They want to contribute new knowledge to this area. So this is going to be maybe perhaps somebody that's going to go into a PhD program, right, that wants to do research. Okay, so really thinking about that career outcomes that we get once we have these degrees, right? So if you have a master's degree, whether it be a master's of engineering, a master's of science, again, career outcomes, generally we're going to see higher starting salaries, increased responsibilities, so being able to have an immediate impact in the workforce. Management jobs are often going to require it, and the potential for higher career advancement. Now, if we have a PhD, somebody that goes into the job market, there's also many different opportunities with somebody with a research background. I think a lot of times, people tend to think, well, if I have a PhD, that means I can only work at a university, teach classes, do research. But, people with PhDs are sought after in many different fields, right? So we need people who are doing PhDs who can work in national labs or government agencies, right? Or research and development within industry. So there's so many different tracks, that we can put people in that have research backgrounds that are outside of academia. So there's many options. And then here, just to show you like the general course outline or for degree requirements within a master's or PhD program. So again, I'm just using Vanderbilt, engineering as an example, but just to show you, generally speaking, a master's of engineering or master's of science, 30 credit hours. You can see here, generally you'll be taking core courses, electives. There may be a thesis involved depending on the program. Generally speaking, a master's degree can be finished within 1 to 2 years in most cases. PhD, as you see, we went over the graduate program timeline, but just to show you here, 72 credit hours. So again, at the end of the day, that comes out to about, could be anywhere from roughly 5 years. Okay, so just really quick, I just wanted to go over like the admissions requirements, just, in terms of what we look for, what are the general requirements that people are going to be looking for when you go to when you're applying to graduate school, whether it be a master's or PhD. And just to say really quickly, like, most students, so again, this is what we do at Vanderbilt in engineering. And again, most universities follow a similar format. So there's an online application that students fill out. We use Slate as our system for our applications. Official transcripts. So there's your transcripts. So your GPA, for example, 3 letters of recommendation, statement of purpose, language tests. We accept TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo, and then your resume or CV. Now, just to say, like, if when you apply to Vanderbilt, we accept students with unofficial transcripts and test scores. So you can send us the copies of these documents. If accepted to the program, we'll then need to see the official versions of these documents. But I'll just say really quickly in terms of the application, for us at least, most of the students we accept into the program have around a 3.5 GPA. So, using the US system, the highest grade point average you can get is a 4.0. So 3.5 is generally the average. Now, what I will say is there's some flexibility in terms of how we evaluate applicants, right? So we're looking at students from a very holistic manner. So yes, you want to have good grades, but at the same time, there's so many things we take into account when it comes to a student, right? You may have a student who has a slightly lower GPA. Let's just say they have a 3.2 GPA, but maybe they have done a lot of research. They have a publication. Maybe they worked in industry in a leadership position. So again, every piece of document that we look at that you give to us will be evaluated equally in terms of how we assess a student's background. So again, it's not a make or break. It's not that, it's not black and white in the sense that if you don't have this, then there's no way you can get in, or if the GPA is slightly lower, there's no way it's really a comprehensive evaluation, and it's really what you can bring to the table as an applicant. And so it's just to say, so GPA is one thing. Again, it can be counterweighted depending on your other experiences. I just gave several examples. faculty have a pretty big say in terms of who they want in their research labs, especially in the PhD program. So if you are in contact with a faculty member before you apply to the program, if they think you're going to be a really good fit for their research lab, there's a pretty good chance, if they decide to support your application, as long as you meet the minimum application requirements, with their support, there's a pretty good chance you'll get into the program. There's also, what I will say is we also, look at the statement of purpose. So I'll talk a little bit about this now. So this is a document where you, in your own words, are there to tell us, what is it about you, your background, your qualifications, your story that makes for the right fit for what we have at Vanderbilt, right? So, when you apply to graduate school, you're applying to a very, very, very specific program or a very specific research area. And so it's really telling us about how is that the right fit for what you're looking for in your own development, in your own profession, right? So if you can make that case in the statement of purpose, which is really your one big opportunity to use your own words to tell us, why should we accept you? So really linking your interest with what we offer, and then how that's going to help propel you in your career as well. So really showing those connections, and even mentioning, if you want to do research, or if you want to do a PhD, even mentioning names of specific professors at Vanderbilt you'd potentially want to work with, these types of, just showing the depth of knowledge and that you have about our university, and really being able to speak in detail really just shows that, you've really done your homework in that respect. So that's something that's important as well. Also, we look for, we have students that are coming in from different backgrounds as well in terms of academic backgrounds. And so this means that, we have non-traditional engineers that we'll accept as well. So these could be physics majors, biology majors. And the reason is they're able to provide a perspective that we don't have right now, right? So if we recruit only a certain type of student or only certain types of engineers, we're only going to get a certain type of knowledge, right? But if we bring in people from other backgrounds with transferable skills and knowledge that we can then, look at from a different perspective, then all of a sudden we get different types of ideas. You get creativity when you put people together in the room that think differently, right? So this is also important for us as well. Just really wanted to show quickly, and this is, again, these types of packages you'll see at other universities as well. I'll speak specifically to ours because that's, what we work with. So, generally speaking, if you apply to a U.S. university, and I'll use, again, Vanderbilt Engineering as an example. So we fully fund our PhD students, which means you get paid to go to school to do research. So these packages are fully funded by the university. We do, for example, offer a package of $90,372 US per year. So if you're in the PhD program, that would cover your full tuition, stipend of $40,000 a year to live off of. So think of it as kind of like a salary you get as a graduate student to cover for your living expenses for the research you're doing. Health insurance is covered, relocation stipend of $2,000, student fees, gym memberships, all that's covered in the package. So if accepted into the program, you'll have the opportunity to apply for additional funding, which these are like internal fellowships. And if you get those, that could boost this package here by anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 extra dollars. So it is a very nice package. Master's students, it's a little different because master's programs generally are shorter term. The tuition is paid for by the students, for example, but we do give a tuition discount of anywhere between $10,000 and $25,000 per student. And then we have a Master's of Engineering and Construction Management program where we will provide a 50% tuition fee waiver. And I know we have students today that are joining us. I know the regions here being covered. We have anywhere from Eastern Europe to Central Asia. It's a pretty wide area, wide region. I just want to say that for students that are coming, that are listening in from places like, for example, Uzbekistan, I was just there several weeks ago. So we actually have an agreement with the Eliot Midi Foundation, which is part of the President's Office of Uzbekistan, to receive funded students to our master's and PhD programs in our School of Engineering. So we do have mechanisms set up where 100% of the fees will be covered by both their government as well as Vanderbilt with a generous tuition discount. I know that the Bolashak Scholarship is another thing that students from Kazakhstan, for example, some may apply to. So Vanderbilt is an approved school on that list as well. So there's other different areas, depending on where you're coming from. There may also be other types of funding mechanisms as well. I'll just go through this part pretty quickly. It's just these deadlines have already passed. So, these are the application deadlines for our different programs, PhD, master's programs in engineering at Vanderbilt. Master's of engineering programs, those are the only deadlines that are still rolling, we're still accepting students for. But each year, the application will open August 1st. So just to say, if you're looking to apply for spring or fall 2027, the application will begin August 1st of this year, that you can begin an application. Just a little bit about graduate student experiences on campus. At Vanderbilt, some other universities have similar things going on as well. So Vanderbilt has over 21 offices on campus dedicated to graduate student services. So this is anything from career advising to academic advising, student organizations. We have a student government called the Graduate Student Council, who, through these initiatives with senior leadership at the university, have implemented new policies that involve, for example, now we have graduate student housing on campus. We have other initiatives that have come out of, this collaboration with the graduate students and our senior leadership. So a lot of ways to get involved in the campus community, a lot of resources for for our students. So again, they have 21 offices on campus dedicated to graduate student services. So there's just a huge support network and a lot of, ways to get involved at the university. I'll just mention this really quick because we do have a summer research program that some students who are undergrads that are listening tonight, may be interested in wanting to apply to. So the deadline already passed for this year, but there is a link that I put right there where you can go in and view the different, research labs we have. There's an application, process you can see, and then we'll post the new deadlines for next year on that same website. But essentially, it's a 10-week program. We give each student that gets accepted to the program an $8,000 stipend to cover living expenses. And then also, it's a great way, to take a really deep dive into research for 10 weeks with our faculty at Vanderbilt, working in their research lab on an active research project and getting paid to do so. Just really quick, I'll just talk about the type of research we do in our School of Engineering for those that are interested. So here you can see the different research institutes and centers on campus. So, this is where we house all of our engineering research in. So anything from transportation engineering to energy and sustainability to, surgery and engineering to cybersecurity, many different areas here. And then I'll just really briefly just go through the different programs in terms of the research we do. So Vanderbilt Biomedical Engineering, we have one of the oldest BME programs in the US, around 60 years now. So making us one of the oldest and most established. Hence, the medical center we talked about as being important to that. So anything from biomedical imaging, biophotonics, Vanderbilt's usually top 2 to 3 in the world in these research areas, but we're also very strong in these other areas as well. Biomaterials, prosthetics, for example. We also have material science, so interdisciplinary material science. It's a program that we have. It's not a department, but it's a program that's made up of many different departments and institutes on campus. Civil and environmental engineering, so anything from risk reliability and resilience to transportation engineering to structural mechanics to sustainability, water resources, quality and treatment, nuclear waste management, energy and sustainability. So it's quite a bit that goes on in this department as well. Electrical and computer engineering. So Vanderbilt has the #1 program, for example, in the US ranked in radiation effects in outer space. So we have a lot of space and defense electronics, cyber physical systems, which is going to be, IoT, cybersecurity, which Vanderbilt also has very strong programs in, photonics, robotics, for example, chemical engineering, anything from, biomolecular engineering, so tissue engineering, regenerative medicine, computational science, materials and energy. So this is going to be renewable energy research, for example. Mechanical engineering, we do anything from, Vanderbilt has a really well-known program in surgical robotics, which you can see here. There's also rehabilitation engineering, so exoskeleton suits that have, allowed paraplegics to walk again. But then we also have more of the traditional areas, your thermal fluids, your nanoscale optics, these other areas as well. Engineering management is another area we focus in. It's an online MEng program. Cyber physical systems as well. Risk reliability and resilience is another area that we focus in. We have a Master's of Engineering in this program. Construction management is another area that we focus in. Surgery and intervention. This is an MEng program that we have in collaboration with the medical center. We have a new campus So Vanderbilt, we're based in Nashville, Tennessee, but we just opened a branch campus in New York City. So this is a new program that we're offering in our New York City campus, which is the Master of Science in Business and Technology. So designed for working professionals with an internship component as well in New York City. And then we also are in the process of opening another campus. So we're going to have a campus in West Palm Beach, Florida, as well as in San Francisco. Really quick, we have a new college on campus called the College of Connected Computing. So computer science used to be part of our School of Engineering. It's now housed in this new college along with data science. So computer science, you can see here, we do anything from AI, big data, machine learning, cyber physical systems. Just to show you really quick the different partnerships that we have when it comes to research. So Vanderbilt, partners with a lot of the big, U.S. agencies, national labs. So, NASA, NSF, NIH, for example, where we get a lot of research funding. Collaborators. So we also work with industry. We work with other universities. You can see that here. Job placement data. So this is, again, just to show you like how, and this also links back to the theme we talked about today about, picking a program, career outcomes. So, really positioning yourself for the job market. So recently when we looked at this data, we had 191 graduates from our engineering program, graduate engineering. 92% were employed within 3 months of graduation. Top employers, you can see here, Microsoft and Google, Apple's another big employer, Vanderbilt Medical Center. Okay, just want to leave you with this. So this is my contact information. So if you have any questions after today, please feel free to send me an email. This is a QR code as well as a sign-up form just to say that we met at today's event. You can register with us and tell us more about yourself. This is also a way for us to follow up with you after the event. So please feel free to do that. I have a 5-minute video that we'll show really quick about just introducing Vanderbilt or School of Engineering. And then after that, we'll do Q&A. So we'll have any, if there's any questions, we'll be able to answer those questions then. So let me see, I'm gonna switch this over to the video.
Is really providing that cross-discipline. I often get asked, what is a Vanderbilt engineer? And I tell people that we don't train engineers, we train leaders at Vanderbilt. And this is one of the core values of Vanderbilt, is really providing that cross-disciplinary training and opportunities and education so that our students, our faculty, our graduates can solve the biggest challenges of society. We have decided that we want to focus on 4 core areas of societal challenges. The first is improving human health for all. The second, ensure a sustainable planet for our future, and this includes energy security, energy transition, climate technologies, clean technologies, sustainability. The third area is that of national and global security. And the fourth area is what we call innovation beyond art. Near Earth technologies, space technologies, aerospace. In all of these areas, you will clearly realize that they are highly interconnected societal problems. So we take a systems level view as an engineer and try to solve this from all different angles.
So my research is really at the intersection of engineering and cancer biology and medicine. I'm able to go collaborate with people in the cancer biology department. I've also formed more formal collaborations with the Imaging Institute, and we're able to use things like ultrasound to really hone in on mechanisms of breast cancer and get more of that biological expertise and the imaging expertise to go in conjunction with our engineering.
Radical collaboration is the core of everything what we do, and that collaboration is not just across Vanderbilt, but it also goes to community collaboration. But beyond that, we collaborate nationally and globally.
We were fortunate to run a 100 vehicle test with friends from Nissan, Toyota, and General Motors. Nissan, as part of the project, donated 100 vehicles that we were able to modify and then give to community members in Nashville to drive experimental technologies up and down I-24 to help fight the stop-and-go traffic that we all get frustrated by. There are so many new tools that are available that have not yet been matured in different engineering disciplines. So it's a really, really exciting time to be in research because the future is uncertain.
One of the huge advantages of Vanderbilt is its size, because you have a very favorable faculty to student ratio. You know everybody, you work with people across disciplines. All of the centers or institutes are within a 15-minute walk of each other. And that creates a family-like atmosphere, and that gives Vanderbilt a unique edge.
It's small enough that you know everybody in the school, you know what they do, their areas of expertise, but we're large enough that we make impactful research discoveries across a lot of application areas. So if I compare to some other schools that I visit that are much larger, you go and you talk with one faculty member, they escort you to another faculty member, and they introduce themselves. Here at Vanderbilt, you know everybody in the school, you know colleagues in physics and in chemistry and other areas that you're going to collaborate with.
As a former international student myself, I see that the tremendous cultural benefit that is brought forth by people coming from all different backgrounds, who sees problems from all different angles and collectively solves them.
It's like a large family, you know, everybody is just supportive of each other, and when we have problems, we want to deal with something in the lab, or we want to brainstorm about some ideas, they are just always there. Or you had a bad day, you can always start a conversation with them, you know, which is just amazing. The chemistry is really good.
So as you consider your future in graduate education, please consider Vanderbilt. We want to provide the facilities, the training, the opportunities to our students, our staff, our faculty that allows them to grow personally and professionally to their best possible self.
All right. Yes. So that is the presentation. So we can open the floor up to questions. If we have anyone with any questions, this will be the time to ask them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Luis, for this great presentation, sharing this video. I hope it was exciting for students to see the inner process at the university. And thank you for covering main points about the application process for graduates and masters and PhD. Maybe you could see we have many comments already, but I will just try to figure out and choose some relevant questions about the presentation. And I think the first one is from the student who is completing master's degree in applied psychology, and she has a question she is trying to decide between pursuing a second master's degree in family counseling or applying for a PhD in clinical psychology. So her question is actually, what questions should I ask myself to make this decision?
Mm-hmm. No, that's a really good question. At the end of the day, I think for this student, it would be about what you want to do professionally. So is the end game for you to do research, or is it to be more of a practitioner in the field? So in other words, having the expertise to really be able to apply it in a professional setting, you know, working in this field, or do you want to be somebody that's actually kind of more behind the scenes doing research, you know, developing, you know, new types of knowledge in this area, and then being able to really be more on kind of like the research and innovation front. So it really just depends, right? Each are going to be using, you know, their own different types of skill sets. You know, some people like to interface more with patients, and they like to be, you know, kind of more on the front lines working, you know, as a practitioner in the field. Other people enjoy doing research. So it really just, you know, it really depends at the end of the day what you want to do professionally. And if the answer is you want to do research, then you'd probably want to do a PhD. If it's more of I want to, you know, be a practitioner in the field, then I would say, you know, the other option would be good. So it just depends what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Thank you so much for this clarification. And one more question about what master's type should people choose after English as a second language bachelor's degree?
It really, you know, in terms of language evaluation, I mean, you know, many schools will accept TOEFL, IELTS, Duolingo. So I think as long as you can get an acceptable score on those tests, it's fair game in terms of what program you can apply to. I mean, there's really no limit in terms of, you want to do a master's, you know, what type of master's, as long as you pass the language, get the essential language scores that you would need for admission, there's, you know, it shows that you would be able to handle the content in that language. So at that point, I don't think it would really be much of an issue.
Yeah, agree, totally agree. Thank you so much. What do you think about getting several masters before committing to PhD?
That's a good question. At the end of the day, what's the reason behind it, right? So I think and I even get, and I'll kind of link it to the question that I usually get from students, which is, I have a bachelor's degree. Should I go work for several years before going back to school to get a graduate degree, or should I just go right into the graduate program? Which is better, right? Or is it better to have more than one master's degree over the other? I think if the master's degrees are in very distinct fields, right, it might make sense to do that if you want to give yourself like a very well-rounded profile. But what most universities, and again, I'll just talk more about the US, because of the liberal arts system that we have in the US, like students are able to get, a very diverse background in terms of like taking many types of elective courses that are outside of their major. So kind of getting an idea of what these specialties would be without having to get several degrees or having to get several different, credits in that area. That's something that helps if you're, maybe just to say, instead of getting several masters, what if like within one master's degree, you can take classes in several different fields and have more of an interdisciplinary approach to, the degree program, instead of having to get a specialization in each field. I mean, I think if the goal is just to say, okay, I want to have a lot of masters to show that I have a really diverse background and I have all these qualifications, I mean, that's one thing. But I think most people, there's constraints, in terms of timelines, needing to get a job, needing to make money, needing to do these types of things. So I think, really prioritizing what's the field you want to work in. Can you do electives in another area so you can also get, kind of a background in these other fields without having to take different diplomas or degree programs? And then what's the fastest way you can get into the workforce? I mean, I think that's what most people would look at. Or the other option could be, maybe you do a master's in this area and you wind up doing a doctorate in another area or in a similar field. And when we say doctorate, we talked about, it could be a research doctorate, it could be a professional doctorate, like the EDDs or the business doctorates, or an MD. So it just really depends, right? There's a lot that goes into that question, right? So
Yeah, that's true. Thank you so much. Another question is about the experience if the person wants to apply for PhD. So is a job experience, first of all, crucial for applying PhD programs? And also, is publishing research articles crucial for this experience as well? And after, for example, completing the master's program, the student hasn't done any research or publication. So what is your suggestion here?
Yes, that's a good question. So, and actually, I was gonna bring this up in the presentation, which is I'll just say for Vanderbilt engineering, so about 60% of the PhD applicants that we accept to the program have had some form of research experience and or publications. So it is not required, but it looks good. And the reason is, if you are already coming into a PhD program with research experience, it shows that one, you already understand, you have the skill set, you understand what it means to do research, so you can hit the ground running. The other thing is you already have a perspective in terms of what's expected in the program, in terms of the output of what it means to do research. And then at the same time, you may have worked in a research area, or maybe you're coming in with a master's degree that allowed you to do a thesis in an area that's directly related to what you want to do in the PhD program, which means you could probably graduate a lot sooner, right? So instead of taking 5 years in that situation, maybe you could graduate in 3 years. But again, it really depends. And then I think the other question was, if you have a master's degree with no research experience, I guess, what kind of chances are there to get into the PhD program? So, well, I mentioned 60% of the students we accept into the PhD program have had research experience or publications. That means there's still another like 40% of the students that we're still accepting that don't have research experience necessarily, but they do have a very strong academic profile. And that's why we took a chance with them and we accepted them to the program. So if you do not have research experience, that's not, that doesn't mean you're not going to get into the program. It just means that, you need to show us in other areas that you're excelling, whether it be your GPA, whether it be you have a really good, statement of purpose, you have great recommenders for your letters of recommendation. So if you can show us in these other areas why you would make a good candidate, or how you could, you're a fast learner, or you'd be able to adapt easily into the program, then I think that's fine. Another way to get research experience, I mean, we talked about, going into a master's program and doing a thesis. There's other options like, we talked about the summer research program. I mean, these are also good opportunities, short-term programs, 10-week programs over the summer where you can go spend time in a research lab. Get hands-on experience doing research. That's also research experience, so that would help. in your universities, if there's opportunities in your school, to do research over the semester. If you know of a researcher that you want to work with, talking to them, seeing if they need extra people, if you could volunteer your time. I mean, these are all things you can be doing to build out your research portfolio. And I did see a question in the chat that I'll just address really quick because it's something we talked a little bit about, which was, do you need to have a master's degree to be eligible for the PhD program? So each university is a little different. I can say in the US, there are many universities that will not require you to have a PhD a master's degree first before going into the PhD program. And so yeah, many students, especially like I'll just use our university as an example, have an undergraduate degree and will apply directly into the PhD program. So and another question I get, which could be a question that would come up today, is to say, like, am I at a disadvantage if I'm applying to a PhD program without a master's degree? And I would say not necessarily, because we have a lot of undergraduates who are coming in with research experience. Some of them have already had publications, and they're just as qualified, if not more qualified, than some of the master's students that we see. So I would not say by any means that you're at a disadvantage if you do not have the master's degree. Okay, sorry. Let's see, do we have any other questions?
We also have a question like this. Do you also have recommendation for acquiring PhD on time? I have heard so many cases of PhD extensions. What would you recommend?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So generally, so the funding package that I showed today is for 5 years. Now, there may be situations where, like, very special circumstances, like a student will, maybe they have a family emergency, there's something that happened, to them, they need an extension. Generally, we can give a 1-year extension. So it could, go up to 6 years. But again, it would have to go through the approval process. It would have to be, it would have to be for a good reason, right? Not just because the student, wasn't doing anything. I mean, it would have to be a very valid reason why we would give them an extension. But again, a student we bring into the program has gone through already a very rigorous evaluation process. So our retention rate is very high, in the sense that if we're going to bring somebody in, it's because we know they're going to be successful.
Thank you so much. One more question about the Fulbright and Vanderbilt University. Is the university involved in this program for foreign students?
Yes. So we do have a Fulbright office on campus, and we do have colleagues that work in that space. So yes, I mean, if you're, if you want to learn more about that, I'd be happy to connect you with our colleagues that work in Fulbright at Vanderbilt. But yes, we've hosted Fulbright scholars in the past.
Yeah, thank you so much. We also have many questions regarding the English level tests. For example, the question about Cambridge C2 exam instead of TOEFL or others. And for example, if a student studied bachelor's degree in English, would this compensate for language tests? So what would you recommend in this case?
Yes, good question. So the language test, so we only accept TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo. So unfortunately, the Cambridge test and these other tests we don't accept. So you'd have to take one of the 3 exams that we do accept for admission. Now, if you graduated from a university, for example, generally the way we give a language waiver is if the student graduated from a university where English is the official language or one of the official languages of the country. And if not, so that's one case. The other case would be if they're going to a university that's, like, for example, a branch campus of a university from one of those countries. So, the example I use is, like, for example, NYU, they have a campus in Abu Dhabi and in Shanghai, right? So it's essentially, it's their campus, but they've based themselves in different regions of the world. The education's the same. The professors teaching are essentially, it's the same model that they're using in the US. And so those students would not need to give us a language exam, right? And I know there's other campuses. I know there's quite a few, like, UK campuses as well that are in, Central Asia and other parts of the world. So, I mean, if you're coming from one of those universities with a branch campus abroad from a country that's primary language or one of the official languages is English, generally speaking, there should be no issue.
Thank you so much. I think we're almost done with the questions. So maybe the last one that will conclude our discussion today. So should a candidate contact the potential, professor in advance of the application stage for the admission to a PhD program? So what would you recommend in this case?
Yes, that's a really good question. So I would say yes. The we talked a little bit about this during the presentation, which is developing a relationship with a potential PI before you apply is very important because one, you can see, okay, is this going to be the right fit? Like, do our personalities match? Can I get along with this person? Another question would be, is the research they're doing similar to what I want to do, and is it the right fit? And that's something that takes really two people to really talk it out, to really understand how this could look. And so really calling them, not calling them, but emailing them, setting up a time for maybe for a Zoom conversation, talking with them about your interest in wanting to work in their lab. A faculty member can look at a student's resume and can talk with them and really get an idea of, okay, is this the kind of person I could see working in my lab? What can they contribute? Do our research interests align? And if that's the case, and you're a competitive applicant, there's a pretty good chance that if this faculty member really wants you in their lab, that you're probably going to get into the program because they already have funding, in their research lab, and they're able to allocate that funding to pay for students to be research assistants working with them on research in their own laboratory. So if they already know the money is there and they already want you to be in their lab, that's a very good sign. The only other thing I would say is you'd want to make sure that you meet the minimum application requirements for admission in addition to having their support. But yes, those conversations should start very early. And I would say that's especially the case if you're looking to apply for a PhD program.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Luis, for this great presentation and discussion. Dear students, thank you so much for being with us today. So far, we have more than 70 students live. So I think
good.
this is great. Yeah, great number. We had many questions regarding Masters of Law, LLM, and things that are about a bit general that are connected with advising. So I would like just to remind everyone, if you have any advising questions regarding your resume, background, and so on, you can contact advisors. Education USA advisors are always available for you for group consultations or individual sessions. If you would like to get more information about specific programs like law or something else, business, and so on, we will have more webinars on these topics later. And for those who are interested in more events and joining our events for not only graduate students, but also undergraduate students, on the screen you can see the QR code, so please register, and there you will see the schedule of the events for the April, and soon it will be available for May as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, Luis, for being with us today.
Yes, Oksana, thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to meet you, to speak with the students, and it was just a really good time. So thank you all so much, and have a great evening.
Thank you, and see you. Goodbye.